Hi there, Simon. So at the moment, I think the Electoral College votes are on 253 to Biden, 214 to Trump. So if they stop the vote, wouldn't it be Biden, the president?
Look, it's an extraordinary three-word message, that one on Twitter from President Donald Trump. Who among us ever thought that we would live to see the day when an American president says that he wants the vote count to be stopped, presumably only the votes that are in favour of Joe Biden as opposed to himself, Sally? It's quite an extraordinary moment, and it comes at a time when President Trump knows that in some of the crucial battleground states where votes are still being counted, including Pennsylvania and Georgia, Joe Biden is advancing in those states. But equally, out in the West, in Arizona, it's Donald Trump that seems to be making up some ground. Presumably, he doesn't want the vote count to be stopped there. That certainly wasn't the message that protesters loyal to President Trump were presenting when they descended on a counting centre in Arizona a few hours ago. Look, at the moment, Joe Biden, depending on which version of events you believe, because there's two versions out there. There's the one that's being promulgated by Fox News and the Associated Press that says Joe Biden only needs to win one more state, could be Nevada, which is going to report its results in about 90 minutes' time. There's the version of the outcome here that's being promulgated by all the other media houses in the United States who say Joe Biden needs to win two states, could be Nevada and maybe Georgia, due to report some results in a few hours' time. But in the middle of this, Donald Trump is absolutely throwing every bit of legal weaponry he's got at this race. If he had a kitchen sink, he'd chuck that in there as well in a bid to try and slow and in some places stop these vote counts in what is essentially a last-ditch attempt to save his presidency.
Can he stop it, though? And the reason I ask is because states run their own elections. So how can the federal government intervene in any way, even through the courts?
Well, there's several different things that he can try to do. I mean, first of all, he's appealing through the courts to try and get the counting stopped. I think there's no chance that that has any possibility of victory. Secondly, he's going for recounts. He's already asked for a recount in Wisconsin. He may well seek a recount in other parts of the country, and in an hour or so, Trump campaign officials are holding a press conference in Nevada where they may announce either legal action or a demand for a recount. We don't know which yet. But there's a third thing Donald Trump can do, and that is to challenge the validity of postal votes in places like Georgia and Pennsylvania, where those postal votes, as they are counted, are mitigated heavily in Joe Biden's favour. And you could get to that situation that we had back in the year 2000. Bush Gore down in Florida, remember those things called hanging chads? And you had those poll workers holding vote papers up to the light in a bid to see exactly whether they'd been adequately punched through. We don't have the hanging chads anymore, but we could get to a point where poll workers are literally required to prove that every single postal vote is a legitimate vote. Show us the vote, show us the signature, show us the identification that was presented in order to justify this vote being cast. And that would put us on, you know, weeks of delay and obfuscation on the road to a transfer of power here. And Joe Biden's going to face a difficult decision, potentially in the next few hours. Does he declare victory and say, right, this is done and dusted, I've won it? Or is that announcement, perhaps he may worry that that announcement's premature? It's going to be very interesting to see what happens here.
Simon, why is it taking so long? I know it's been a really big election, but there are a lot of counters, a lot of people counting. Why is it taking so long to count those last votes in those battleground states?
I don't think there's a surprise in that, Sally. I mean, election officials all over the country have warned for weeks that because of COVID-19, and let's just briefly mention yesterday, record numbers of new infections, 100,000 new COVID-19 cases in America in a 24-hour period, a disaster. Because of that, more and more people decided to cast their ballots by post. They didn't want to go and queue up at polling stations. They were worried about the public health risks of doing that. and it takes time to count the postal ballots, but it also takes time to receive them. The post office here is not as well-oiled a machine as it could be, and in some states it can take a week, maybe 9 days to get those votes into the sorting centres. And the courts have said in North Carolina 9 days is the limit. That's the point at which you can, after that you can reject the votes because they've arrived too late. So this just takes time, and in a very closely fought election, 72 million people backing Joe Biden so far, 68.5 million backing Donald Trump. You know, you're dealing with a vast influx of ballots that have to be counted.
Well, Simon Marks in Washington, we're going to check back in with you in a couple of hours' time. And as you say, we might hear results, I think it was, from Nevada in that time, which would be quite crucial. Thank you very much, Simon Marks in Washington.